The grand hall of the alien emperor was silent, but the silence was heavy, full of arrogance and cruelty. Towering columns of shimmering crystal reached toward a ceiling that seemed to touch the stars themselves. In the center, the alien emperor sat upon his throne, a creature of fearsome power, his golden eyes scanning the room with cold amusement. Around him, advisors, generals, and servants bowed and whispered, careful not to disturb his mood. Today he was bored, and boredom in the heart of a ruler like him could be dangerous. On the floor before him, trembling and small, was the dragon girl. She was unlike any other dragon in the empire. Her wings were thin and weak, her scales pale, and her eyes, though bright, reflected the constant sting of ridicule she had suffered. The emperor's own court had mocked her endlessly, calling her a failure, a joke, a creature too fragile to matter. But the emperor, cruel and clever, had a new idea. A joke of his own, a game to entertain himself. You see her, he said, his voice sharp as metal. This weak, useless dragon. She is the perfect gift. A gift to amuse me. He leaned forward, the shadow of his massive wings falling over the trembling girl. I will hand her over to a human mechanic. Let us see if he can do anything with her. Perhaps he will break her, or perhaps he will find her worthless and discard her. Either way, it will be entertaining. The dragon girl's heart pounded like a drum. She had heard of humans, strange creatures from a distant planet, often regarded by the empire as clever but primitive. Some dragons had feared them, others had dismissed them. But the idea of being given to a human was terrifying. She did not know what awaited her, and the uncertainty gnawed at her more than the emperor's cruel laughter. The human mechanic, the emperor had been told, lived on a starship that traveled between worlds, repairing ships and machines. He was clever, they said, but ordinary, weak, like her. The emperor laughed to himself, imagining the dragon girl struggling in human hands, her strength failing, her pride shattered. It will be perfect, he murmured. A failure in the hands of a human, a spectacle of weakness. The doors to the hall opened with a hiss of air and the soft steps of armored soldiers. The human mechanic entered, unaware of the role he was about to play in the emperor's cruel amusement. He was tall but unassuming, his clothes simple, his eyes sharp but kind. Unlike the dragons in the hall, he moved with calm confidence, unafraid of the emperor's immense presence. Bring her forward, the emperor commanded, and the dragon girl stumbled slightly as she was pushed into the light. She looked at the human, her fear and uncertainty mixing with a flicker of hope. Perhaps he would not laugh, perhaps he would not hurt her. But she had learned long ago that hope was dangerous. It could be shattered easily. The human mechanic looked at her carefully, his gaze studying every detail. Her wings, her scales, her eyes that seemed to beg for understanding. He did not flinch. He did not laugh. Instead, he nodded slightly, as if he saw something that no one else had bothered to notice. She is fragile, he said softly, his voice carrying through the hall. But she is alive. She can be helped. The emperor's laughter rang out, cruel and loud. Helped? He sneered. This creature is nothing. You will find her useless. She will break under your hands, human. I promise you, she will fail you, and you will fail her. It will amuse me greatly. The dragon girl's heart sank at his words. Every creature in the room seemed to share the emperor's cruel delight. But the human did not react with fear or anger. He merely nodded again, almost respectfully, as if acknowledging the emperor's warning while silently ignoring it. Then we shall see, he said, turning toward her. Let's go. As they left the grand hall, the emperor leaned back in his throne, eyes narrowing with anticipation. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, and the journey ahead promised both danger and discovery. The dragon girl did not know where the human would take her, or what awaited them on the distant starship. But a small spark, almost imperceptible, flickered in her heart. A spark of curiosity, a spark of defiance. The starship was unlike anything the dragon girl had ever seen. It was vast, humming with energy, full of strange devices and machines she could not understand. Yet the human moved through it with ease, his hands and mind at work, adjusting, repairing, testing. He introduced himself simply as Kale, a name that sounded human but carried weight in his tone. He did not speak down to her. He did not treat her as a burden or a joke. Instead, he observed, learned, and waited. For the first time in her life, the dragon girl felt a strange mixture of fear and hope. She did not understand why this human seemed so different, why he did not mock her, why he did not recoil at her weakness. But she felt the stirrings of trust, even as the shadow of the Emperor's laughter lingered in her memory. Days passed aboard the starship, and the dragon girl began to notice small things about Kale. He was patient, careful, and intelligent. He seemed to understand machines and creatures alike, seeing connections that others overlooked. He fed her, helped her stretch her wings, and encouraged her to move, slowly but steadily. She could not help but feel a strange bond forming between them, a bond that felt both comforting and powerful. The Emperor, back on his throne world, continued to watch through his spies and devices, expecting news of her failure. But instead, reports came of unusual events. The dragon girl, fragile and mocked, had begun to adapt, her movements becoming stronger, her reactions sharper. The human mechanic, far from breaking her, seemed to unlock something within her, a potential no one had dared imagine. The Emperor's amusement shifted to confusion. He had expected weakness, failure, humiliation. Instead, he saw growth, intelligence, and a strange, unstoppable bond forming between dragon and human. Each report, each observation, chipped away at his certainty, replaced by unease, then worry. Could it be possible that the creature he had dismissed so cruelly was thriving? Back on the starship, the dragon girl stretched her wings for the first time without fear. The human stood beside her, watching carefully, smiling slightly. "You can do it," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I know you can." She felt the strength in his words, the encouragement, the belief that no one else had ever given her. Something inside her stirred, a strength she had never known she possessed. Far across the galaxy, the Emperor clenched his claws in frustration, his golden eyes burning with disbelief. He had expected failure, yet what he saw was something far more dangerous, something powerful. The dragon he had mocked, given away as a joke, was becoming something the universe had not prepared for. And the human, clever and ordinary to the Emperor's eyes, was the key to unlocking it. The stage was set. A joke had been made, but the consequences were beyond the Emperor's imagining. And deep in the dragon girl's heart, a quiet determination grew. She had been underestimated, mocked, and abandoned. But now, under the guidance of the human mechanic, she was beginning to see the truth. Perhaps weakness was only the beginning, and the joke had turned into a challenge far greater than the Emperor could ever predict. The stars outside the starship streaked by in endless motion, carrying them into unknown territory. Every hum of the engines, every flash of light, every shadow on the walls whispered of the adventure to come. The dragon girl flexed her wings, feeling the stir of power and possibility. And for the first time in her life, she wondered, just how far could she rise? And somewhere in the distance, the Emperor's laughter faded, replaced by a creeping, bitter worry. The joke he had played was no longer a joke. The disabled dragon was alive, growing, and perhaps, in ways he could not yet see, unstoppable. The starship hummed like a living creature, its metal walls vibrating with energy as it glided silently through the stars. The dragon girl sat in the corner of the main chamber, her wings folded tightly against her body, her eyes watching every movement of the human mechanic. He moved with a quiet confidence, his hands skilled and precise as he checked the systems, repaired circuits, and adjusted mechanisms that seemed impossible to understand. To the dragon, he seemed almost magical. Kale, the human mechanic, was unlike anyone she had ever seen. He didn't flinch at her fragile body or recoil at the sight of her weak wings. Instead, he spoke softly, clearly, but with a quiet authority that made her heart beat faster. "Don't be afraid," he said. "I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you." The dragon girl studied him carefully. She wanted to trust him. She truly did. But years of ridicule and cruelty had made her cautious. Every creature she had ever met had laughed at her weakness. Every dragon in her own empire had mocked her. Could she really believe this human wouldn't do the same? Kale noticed her hesitation. "I know it's hard to trust," he said, crouching slightly so he was closer to her level. "I know you've been hurt, but we need to work together if you want to survive, and maybe even become stronger than you ever imagined." The dragon girl flinched at his words, surprised. Strength? She had always believed that her weakness was permanent. Every scale on her body had felt like proof that she would never be useful, never matter. And yet, the way Kale looked at her, calm, patient, and confident, made her wonder if perhaps she had been wrong all along. The first test came unexpectedly. Kale led her to a large chamber filled with strange machines, mechanical arms, and devices that hissed and whirred. "This is your training room," he said simply. "We'll start with small movements. I want to see what your wings can do." The dragon girl's heart sank. She had tried flapping her wings before and failed, collapsing in pain and embarrassment. But Kale didn't laugh. He didn't mock her. He simply waited, observing her struggle with an intensity that felt almost like respect. "Take it slow," he instructed. "One movement at a time. Don't push too hard." Her wings trembled as she lifted them slightly, feeling the weak muscles protesting. Kale's eyes followed every twitch, every flutter, offering advice with patience. "That's good. A little more. Yes, just like that." Hours passed, and something miraculous began to happen. The dragon girl felt her wings grow stronger with every motion, small at first, then gradually more controlled. She could feel her muscles responding, her body learning movements she had thought impossible. The human mechanic's calm presence gave her courage, and for the first time in her life, she felt a flicker of hope. But it wasn't just physical strength that began to emerge. Kale was clever, noticing patterns, testing her reflexes, and gently pushing her limits. Each small success built confidence, each failure taught patience. And slowly, the dragon girl began to realize that her weakness was not a curse. It was simply something no one had taken the time to understand before. Kale also taught her about machines. He explained engines, energy cores, and control systems, sometimes in simple words, sometimes in ways that required her to observe and think. To the dragon, it was a strange, fascinating world. She had never known curiosity like this, never known that learning could be exciting instead of terrifying. Yet danger was never far away. The Emperor had spies and scouts monitoring the galaxy, reporting any unusual activity. Word of the dragon's survival and unexpected progress began to reach him. Each report chipped away at his amusement, replacing it with unease. How could a fragile, disabled dragon thrive under the care of a human? He had expected failure, humiliation, but now he saw strength, hidden strength, awakening under someone he considered weak and ordinary. One evening, as the starship drifted through a sparkling nebula, the dragon girl sat beside Kale. Her wings stretched slightly, testing their newfound strength. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly, her voice trembling. "Why don't you laugh like everyone else?" Kale looked at her, his expression calm but firm. "Because I see potential," he said simply. "I see what others refuse to see. You are not weak, you've only been underestimated. And I have no interest in laughing at someone who can become stronger than me someday." The words struck her deeply. Never before had anyone believed in her like this. Never before had someone treated her as more than a joke. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, a mixture of trust and determination. For the first time, she wanted to fight, not for others' approval, but for herself. Days turned into weeks, and her progress amazed even Kale. She could flap her wings with controlled power, lift objects, and even begin small bursts of flight. Each attempt brought joy and frustration in equal measure, but Kale was always there, guiding, encouraging, correcting. They laughed together when mistakes happened, celebrated quietly when she succeeded. And yet, suspense lingered. The galaxy was vast, full of dangers the dragon girl could not imagine. Pirates, rogue aliens, and even the Emperor's agents could strike at any moment. Every day on the starship was a test, not only of her growing strength but of her courage and trust. Could she rise above the fear and uncertainty that had defined her life? Could she face the world that had always mocked her? Kale noticed her hesitation. "You've grown stronger," he said. "But strength alone is not enough. You must learn to trust yourself as much as you trust me. That is the real power." The dragon girl nodded, absorbing his words. She flexed her wings, feeling the strength that had been hidden within her for so long. For the first time, she understood that weakness was not permanent, that belief and effort could change everything. And somewhere deep inside, a spark of defiance began to burn. Defiance against the Emperor, against those who had mocked her, against the limits she had always believed she had. One night, as the starship passed near a glowing asteroid belt, a warning alarm blared. Kale sprang into action, his hands flying over controls, adjusting shields, and plotting a course to safety. The dragon girl felt her heart pound, fear rising. But she also felt something new. Excitement, readiness, the rush of power coursing through her wings. For the first time, she was not just being protected. She was ready to act. Kale turned to her, his eyes sharp. "You can do this. Trust yourself. Trust your wings." With a deep breath, the dragon girl spread her wings wide and leapt into the zero-gravity chamber. The engines roared, and she moved with precision, dodging debris, using strength and speed she hadn't known she possessed. Kale guided her with calm instructions, but the dragon girl began to act on instinct, her body responding faster than her mind could command. When the danger passed, they both collapsed, laughing and breathing heavily. The dragon girl realized something profound. She was no longer the weak, fragile creature the Emperor had mocked. She was becoming something stronger, something clever, something capable of defying expectations. Far away, the Emperor's spies reported the incident. His golden eyes narrowed as he listened. The joke had backfired. The dragon was thriving, the human was clever, and together, they were becoming a force he had never imagined. And for the first time, the Emperor felt something he had rarely experienced. Worry. The dragon girl looked at Kale, her heart racing with a strange mixture of fear and excitement. "What happens next?" she whispered. Kale smiled softly, his hand brushing against hers. "Next, we see how far we can go," he said. "And maybe, just maybe, we show the universe what underestimated creatures can do." Outside, the stars stretched endlessly, glittering like diamonds in the dark. Inside the starship, a fragile dragon and a human mechanic had begun a journey that would shake the galaxy, challenge the Emperor, and turn a cruel joke into a story of courage, trust, and hidden power. The spark of possibility burned brightly, and nothing, not fear, not doubt, not even the Emperor, could extinguish it. The starship glided silently through the endless black of space, stars glittering like scattered jewels. Inside, the dragon girl moved cautiously, yet with growing confidence. Her wings, once fragile and trembling, now flexed with strength and purpose. Every muscle responded to her will, and every movement carried a quiet power she had never known existed. Kale, the human mechanic, observed her closely, a calm smile on his face. "You've come far," he said, his voice steady but filled with encouragement. "But there's more inside you than even you realize. You have to find it." The dragon girl tilted her head, unsure what he meant. "Inside me? What do you mean?" Kale's eyes were serious. "You're not just a weak dragon. You have hidden abilities, powers that even the Emperor didn't know existed. And the first step is to discover them." She felt a shiver of fear and excitement. Hidden powers? That sounded dangerous and wonderful. Could it be true that all her weakness had been hiding something extraordinary? The next morning, Kale led her to a training chamber unlike any other. The walls were lined with glowing panels and energy fields, the floor smooth but filled with subtle vibrations. Strange instruments hovered in the air, measuring, analyzing, and recording every movement. "Here," Kale said, "we'll test your reflexes, your speed, and your strength. But more importantly, we'll see if you can sense things, feel things beyond the obvious. Close your eyes and concentrate. Trust your instincts. The dragon girl hesitated. Her instincts had often failed her in the past. Every failure, every mockery, lingered in her mind. But Kale's calm presence gave her courage. Slowly, she closed her eyes, letting the hum of the ship and the vibrations in the floor become her guide. First, nothing happened. Doubt gnawed at her, and she opened her eyes briefly. I can't feel anything," she whispered. Kale shook his head gently. "You must clear your mind. Forget weakness. Forget fear. Feel yourself. Feel the energy around you." She tried again. The world faded. The humming of the engines, the glow of the panels, the tiny movements of the starship. She felt them all. Her mind stretched, reaching into the spaces around her. A strange sensation coursed through her body, like fire and water at the same time. Suddenly, without warning, her wings lifted themselves, hovering above the floor. She had not moved them consciously, yet they obeyed some hidden command within her. She gasped, opening her eyes. Kale's face broke into a wide smile. "You see? It's there. You just didn't know how to use it." Her heart raced. The power inside her, once hidden, was awakening. She tried again, this time moving her wings deliberately. Light sparks danced along the edges of her scales, small but bright. She could feel energy flowing through her body, responding to her thoughts. Each motion was stronger, faster, sharper. Kale's encouragement continued. "Don't hold back. Test it. Push it. You'll learn to control it." For hours they trained. The dragon girl discovered she could sense vibrations in the walls, hear distant sounds inside the ship, and even feel the movement of air currents before they reached her. Her wings began to produce small bursts of energy, enough to lift her into short flights within the chamber. She realized that the abilities the Emperor had mocked were real, and far more powerful than anyone had imagined. But the training was not without danger. One misstep, one overreach, and she could have injured herself. Kale was always close, guiding her, catching her when she faltered, helping her understand the limits of her power. He never judged, never mocked, only taught and encouraged. As the days passed, the dragon girl's confidence grew. She began to test herself in small but daring ways. She could lift objects with her energy, manipulate small devices on the ship, and even anticipate the movements of the ship itself in ways that Kale found impressive. Each new discovery made her heart swell with pride and excitement. She was no longer the fragile, disabled dragon the Emperor had laughed at. She was becoming something extraordinary. One night, while floating near the observation deck, she looked out at the vast galaxy stretching endlessly before her. Stars burned bright in the darkness, distant planets glowing faintly. For the first time, she felt a sense of freedom, of possibility. "Kale," she whispered, "what if the Emperor comes for me? What if he tries to take me back?" Kale's expression grew serious. "He will come. He will send forces. But we are ready. You're ready. Your powers are growing faster than he expects. And together, we will face whatever comes." A chill ran down her spine. The Emperor had been cruel, arrogant, and dangerous. She remembered the mocking laughter, the cold golden eyes, the way he had treated her as a joke. But now, with her newfound abilities and the human by her side, the fear she had carried her whole life felt smaller, weaker than her own strength. The first test of her power came sooner than expected. Sensors on the ship detected a small fleet approaching. Spies sent by the Emperor to observe and, if necessary, capture the dragon. Kale activated the ship's defense systems, but he also turned to her. "Your turn," he said simply. "Show me what you've learned." The dragon girl's wings flared, the edges sparking with bright energy. She concentrated, feeling the vibrations of the approaching ships, sensing their positions before they appeared on the screens. With a sweep of her wings, she sent a pulse of energy toward the nearest ship, disabling its engines instantly. Other ships reacted, but she moved with precision, anticipating their attacks and countering them with skill Kale had never seen before. When the last ship retreated, disabled but unharmed, Kale let out a low whistle. I didn't think you'd master that so quickly. You're stronger than I imagined. The dragon girl felt a mixture of pride and disbelief. Could this really be her? The weak, mocked dragon who had been given away as a joke? Now she could face enemies, protect her human companion, and even challenge the Emperor's expectations. That night, she lay in her small quarters, wings wrapped around herself, thinking about what had happened. Her body hummed with power, her mind alive with possibilities. The galaxy outside was dangerous, but she no longer felt helpless. Something inside her had awakened, a secret strength that no one, not even the Emperor, could take away. Kale knocked gently on the door. Are you okay? He asked. She nodded, smiling faintly. Yes, I think I'm ready for what comes next. Kale's eyes sparkled with pride. Good, because the galaxy isn't going to wait, and neither should you. Outside, far away, the Emperor's golden eyes narrowed as he received reports. The dragon girl was no longer a joke. She was growing, learning, mastering powers even he could not predict. His amusement was gone, replaced with a creeping fear he had never felt before. The creature he had mocked, given away to a human mechanic as a cruel joke, was becoming a force beyond his control. And deep in the dragon girl's heart, a quiet, fiery determination burned. She had been underestimated, abandoned, and laughed at. But now her secret was no longer hidden. Her power was awakening. And one day the galaxy would see just how strong a dragon, and a human who believed in her, could truly be. The stars outside the observation deck glimmered endlessly, and the dragon girl stretched her wings, feeling the pulse of energy within her. Something had changed. She was no longer a victim of the Emperor's cruelty. She was alive, strong, and ready. The secret within her had awakened, and nothing would ever make her weak again. Far across the galaxy, on his obsidian throne world, the alien Emperor sat in uneasy silence. The usual hum of his palace, the soft rustle of his attendants, the golden glow of his eyes reflecting the distant stars. Everything felt wrong. For the first time in centuries, amusement had turned to unease. Reports had begun arriving from his scouts and spies scattered across nearby star systems. Each report brought the same story. The useless dragon, the one he had mocked and handed to a human mechanic as a cruel joke, was thriving. She was learning, growing, and using powers that even seasoned generals of his empire had never seen before. The Emperor leaned forward, his massive claws resting on the armrests of his throne. Explain this, he growled, his voice cold and sharp, carrying through the silent hall. His advisors shuffled uneasily, bowing low. She is advancing faster than expected, my Emperor, one whispered, fear lacing his voice. Under the human mechanic's guidance, she is learning abilities that no dragon of her age or weakness should possess. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Abilities? What abilities? Speak clearly. Another advisor stepped forward, trembling. She can manipulate energy with her wings, sense vibrations in her environment, anticipate movement with precision, even disable small starships with calculated strikes. It is extraordinary, my Emperor. A bitter laugh escaped the Emperor, but it was hollow. Extraordinary? He repeated. That weak creature, the one I gave away as a joke, and a human, of all creatures, guides her. He leaned back, the shadows of his wings stretching across the hall. This is unacceptable. He rose from his throne, moving with the silent, terrifying grace of a predator. The vast chamber seemed to shrink as his presence filled it. Prepare a fleet, he commanded. I want to observe this human and dragon closely, and if necessary, intervene. I will not allow a joke I made to turn into a threat to my empire. Back on the starship, the dragon girl was unaware of the storm brewing in the Emperor's mind. She trained tirelessly with Kale, her body stronger than ever, her mind sharp and focused. Each day, she discovered new ways to use her powers, sensing the subtle energies around the ship, controlling small bursts of energy, and moving with speed and precision that had once been impossible for her. Kale watched her closely, noting every improvement, every success. "You've grown far beyond what I expected," he said one morning, as they practiced in the zero-gravity chamber. "But strength alone won't be enough. You have to learn strategy, timing, and control. The galaxy is full of threats, and the Emperor is not the only danger out there." The dragon girl nodded, her golden eyes bright with determination. "I understand. I will not be weak again. I will not be a joke." Kale smiled, pride in his expression. "Good, because soon you may need all your power and all your courage to face what's coming." Days passed, and the Emperor's agents continued to send reports. The dragon girl's abilities were growing exponentially, and Kale's guidance made her more than just strong. She was clever, adaptable, and fearless in ways the Emperor could not predict. His amusement, once so confident and easy, had twisted into concern, and concern had become fear. "Send me more details," the Emperor commanded. "I want to know everything. How strong is she? What can she do? And what weaknesses does she have? Find them." The advisors hesitated, fearful of the Emperor's wrath if their information displeased him. Yet they obeyed, sending scouts and spies closer to the starship, gathering every scrap of intelligence they could. Meanwhile, aboard the starship, the dragon girl and Kale were unaware of the eyes watching them from afar. They trained, laughed, and planned, enjoying the trust and bond that had formed between them. The dragon's confidence grew daily, and Kale could see the subtle changes. The way she now anticipated his moves, adapted to new challenges, and even improvised in ways he had never taught her. One evening, as the starship passed through a dense asteroid field, Kale tested her reflexes and energy control. "I want you to navigate this field on your own," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Use your wings, your senses, your energy. Don't hold back." The dragon girl hesitated only for a moment. Then, with a deep breath, she spread her wings and leapt into the narrow path between the asteroids. Her wings flared with energy, sparking as she maneuvered with precision, dodging massive rocks, sensing shifts in the air, and predicting movement before it happened. She moved faster than Kale had expected, her confidence and control evident in every motion. When she returned to him, breathless but exhilarated, Kale's eyes shone with admiration. "You've grown beyond what I imagined. You're ready for more." Little did they know, the Emperor had observed this display from a distant outpost. His eyes narrowed, his golden gaze burning with frustration and disbelief. He had expected weakness, failure, humiliation, but now he saw a dragon mastering her powers under the guidance of a human. A creature he had once dismissed as fragile was becoming formidable, clever, and dangerous. The Emperor's claws clenched. "This is no longer a joke," he muttered, almost to himself. "This is a threat, and I will not allow it to grow unchecked." He summoned his high command, issuing orders with sharp precision. "Prepare for intervention," he said. "We will observe, we will test, and if necessary, we will act. That human and dragon cannot be allowed to challenge the Empire's power. Their defiance will be crushed before it spreads." Back on the starship, the dragon girl felt a strange sensation as her energy pulses stirred within her wings. Something in the vast reaches of space felt off. A distant presence, cold and sharp, reached out like a shadow over the stars. She shivered but did not falter. Kale noticed her hesitation. "What is it?" he asked, concern lacing his voice. I don't know," she whispered. "Something is coming, watching us." Kale's eyes hardened. "Then we must be ready. Whatever it is, we face it together." The dragon girl nodded, determination blazing in her heart. She had discovered her secret power, her hidden abilities, and the bond with the human mechanic had given her courage she had never known. But now the stakes were higher. The Emperor, once distant and amused, had realized the dragon's potential. He was coming closer than ever before, and his plans were no longer playful. As the starship moved deeper into the galaxy, the dragon girl spread her wings, feeling the energy thrumming through her body. She could sense the distant threat, feel the Emperor's gaze, and anticipate the challenges that lay ahead. She was no longer weak. She was no longer a joke. And when the time came, she would show the Emperor that underestimating her had been his greatest mistake. Somewhere in the Emperor's palace, his golden eyes glowed brighter, a mixture of fury and fear burning within them. The dragon he had mocked, given to a human mechanic as a cruel joke, was no longer fragile. She was growing, learning, mastering abilities that made her unpredictable, dangerous, and unstoppable. The galaxy had shifted, silently and irreversibly. The joke had ended, and a new game had begun. One in which the Emperor would find that power and courage could come from the most unexpected places. And deep in the dragon girl's heart, a fire burned. She had been underestimated, abandoned, and mocked, but now she was ready. Ready to face the galaxy, ready to face the Emperor, and ready to show the universe that weakness could be transformed into unstoppable strength. The stars outside the starship shimmered endlessly, reflecting the growing power and determination of the dragon. And far away, the Emperor's realization had begun. The joke he had played was no longer in his favor. The dragon, and the human who believed in her, were no longer mere subjects. They were a force he could not ignore, and a storm he had never anticipated was coming. The warning alarms blared through the starship, cutting through the calm hum of engines and echoing in every corridor. The dragon girl's heart pounded in her chest as she felt the vibrations of approaching ships through the floor beneath her claws. Kale moved swiftly, activating shields, adjusting controls, and issuing commands with practiced precision. Yet, this time, the danger was different. This was not a test, not a minor threat. The Emperor himself had sent a small strike fleet to capture her, and now they had arrived. The dragon girl's wings flared, energy crackling along their edges. Fear and adrenaline surged, but so did confidence. She had trained for this moment, tested herself in ways the Emperor could never have predicted. And now it was time to use everything she had learned. Kale turned to her, eyes sharp. Remember your training. Trust your instincts. Use your wings, your senses, everything you've learned. I'll guide you, but this is your fight. The dragon girl nodded, the fire in her heart burning brighter than fear. She spread her wings and leapt into the zero-gravity combat chamber, which hummed with energy fields and shimmering light. The first of the Emperor's ships emerged from the dark void outside, sleek and menacing, their energy weapons glowing as they locked onto the starship. Without hesitation, she moved, wings beating with strength and speed, energy flaring. She launched herself at the nearest vessel. Her claws struck with precision, sending a pulse of energy that disabled its engines before the human crew could even react. The ship spun, caught in the gravitational pull of the starship, and drifted harmlessly aside. Kale's voice rang in her ears, calm but urgent. Good. Now the others. The remaining ships closed in faster, their weapons firing in calculated bursts. The dragon girl dodged with instincts she had honed over weeks of training. Her energy pulses acted like shields, deflecting blasts before they could hit, and she struck back with precision, sending sparks and shrapnel into the void. Each movement was measured, deliberate, and yet instinctive, a perfect blend of training and natural power. For the first time, she felt the thrill of battle. Not fear, not hesitation, but clarity. Every move she made, every pulse of energy she unleashed, confirmed what Kale had always believed. She was not weak, she was formidable, and she had the courage to act when it mattered most. The Emperor's fleet faltered, unprepared for a dragon capable of such control and strength. Their tactics, designed to overwhelm, failed against her speed and ingenuity. Every attack was anticipated, every maneuver countered. The starship itself seemed to respond to her energy, shields reinforcing automatically, systems adapting to her commands even before she consciously gave them. Kale watched in awe. You've grown beyond anything I imagined, he said, guiding her through the chaos. Now, finish this. With a roar that echoed through the starship, the dragon girl surged forward, energy flaring like fire against the dark void. She struck the lead ship of the Emperor's fleet, disabling its weapons with a precise strike that left the crew stunned and powerless. Other ships tried to regroup, but her movements were a blur, unstoppable, calculated, and devastating. Yet she was not reckless. Kale's calm voice reminded her, "Control your power. Don't destroy unnecessarily." She nodded, energy pulsing along her wings, and carefully neutralized the remaining ships, sending them disabled but intact into space. Each strike was controlled, each maneuver precise, demonstrating mastery, intelligence, and mercy. For the first time, she realized that strength was not just raw power. It was the combination of skill, strategy, and heart. When the last enemy ship drifted harmlessly away, the Dragon Girl collapsed, wings trembling, energy still sparking faintly along their edges. Kale rushed to her side, his eyes filled with pride and concern. "You did it," he said softly. "You protected the ship and yourself. You were incredible." She looked at him, breathless, heart racing. I never thought I could do that. I never thought I was strong enough." Kale shook his head, smiling. "You always had the strength. You just didn't know it. Now the Emperor knows too." Far away, in the dark expanse of his palace world, the alien Emperor received reports of the battle. His golden eyes flared with fury and disbelief. "Impossible," he hissed, his voice echoing through the obsidian halls. "That weak creature, that joke I played, she fought back and won." He slammed a claw onto his throne's armrest, the sound like a crack of thunder. "Mobilize the fleet. I will not allow this defiance. That dragon, that human, they cannot be left unchecked." Back on the starship, the Dragon Girl felt a strange mix of exhilaration and caution. She had won, yes, but the Emperor would not stop. His fury, his obsession, would grow, and she knew the next encounter would be far more dangerous. But for the first time, she also felt confidence. Confidence in her strength, her skills, and her bond with Kale. Kale placed a hand on her shoulder. "You see? You're not the weak dragon anyone thought you were. You're powerful, and you're learning to control it. We'll be ready for whatever comes next." She nodded, wings folding around herself, energy still sparking faintly. "I will not be a joke again," she whispered. "I will not let him win." The stars outside the starship glimmered silently, indifferent to the battles below. Yet within the ship, a quiet storm had begun. The Dragon Girl had discovered her true power, faced the Emperor's first test, and emerged victorious. She was no longer fragile, no longer mocked, no longer a creature to be underestimated. And somewhere across the galaxy, the Emperor seethed. The joke he had played, the cruelty he had indulged in, had returned to him like a shadow. The dragon he had dismissed, given away as a joke to a human mechanic, had struck back with force, skill, and intelligence he could not control. The galaxy itself seemed to shift in response, subtle but undeniable. The Dragon Girl and Kale had proven something extraordinary, not just survival but mastery. And as the starship moved forward, deeper into the unknown, the Emperor's realization became terrifyingly clear. The joke was over. The dragon had risen. The human was clever and determined, and together, they were a force he could no longer dismiss. The Dragon Girl flexed her wings, feeling the pulse of energy flowing through her, the thrill of her first victory, and the quiet promise of greater challenges to come. She had faced the Emperor's wrath, survived, and grown stronger. And with Kale by her side, she knew that the next battle, when it came, would be one she was ready to face. For the first time, she felt the thrill of defiance, the joy of power, and the unshakable confidence that she was no longer a pawn in the Emperor's cruel games. She was a dragon who had been underestimated, but now, she was unstoppable. And somewhere in the cold halls of the Emperor's palace, golden eyes burned with fury and fear. The joke he had played, the cruelty he had unleashed, had been met with a force he could not control. The dragon had struck back, and the storm of consequences was only beginning. The Emperor's throne world was quiet, but the silence was heavy, tense, and full of foreboding. For days, he had listened to reports from his scouts, each one describing the dragon girl's growing power, her mastery of energy, and her bond with the human mechanic. Each report stoked a fire in his chest. Not the fire of amusement, as it had once been, but a cold, bitter rage. He had played a cruel joke, mocking her weakness, handing her over to a human as if she were nothing more than an object of ridicule. And now, the consequences of that cruelty were undeniable. That small, fragile dragon was no longer weak. She was powerful, clever, dangerous, and she had the human mechanic, her ally, her guide, and her equal, to protect and train her. The Emperor clenched his claws, his golden eyes glowing with fury. How could this happen? He hissed to himself, pacing the polished floors of his palace. That dragon, that human, they should have been nothing. I promised myself amusement, not defiance. And yet, they have become unstoppable. Advisors and generals bowed in fear, careful not to meet his gaze. They had served him for centuries, and they had seen his wrath, but never had they witnessed the cracks in his confidence. Now those cracks were visible, growing, spreading. "My Emperor," one whispered, trembling, "we can still act. We can mobilize the fleet, strike before they gain more power." The Emperor's voice cut through the hall like steel. "Too late," he growled. "They have already grown. Every day I wait, their strength multiplies. The dragon, the human, they have surpassed every prediction. I underestimated them, and that was my greatest mistake." Meanwhile, far from the Emperor's obsidian throne world, the starship moved swiftly through the void, the dragon girl and Kale preparing for their next mission. They had grown closer, their trust unshakable, and their bond had become a source of strength neither had expected. The dragon girl flexed her wings, feeling the pulse of energy flowing through them. "Kale," she said quietly, "do you think he knows how strong I am now?" Kale's eyes narrowed. "He knows more than we want him to, but he still doesn't understand. You're not just strong. You're clever, adaptable, and unpredictable. That makes you dangerous, far more than he imagines." The dragon girl's golden eyes gleamed. "Then it's time he learns. It's time he regrets underestimating me." Kale nodded, pride and caution mixing in his gaze. "Exactly. But remember, this is bigger than us. The Emperor won't just strike blindly. He'll plan, strategize, and test you. You need to be ready for everything." Days later, as they traveled through a cluster of stars shimmering with cosmic energy, sensors on the ship detected movement. A massive fleet approaching from the Emperor's world. The dragon girl's pulse quickened. This was it. The Emperor's response. The consequence of the joke he had played. Kale moved quickly, activating shields, energy pulses, and maneuvering thrusters with precision. "We'll face them together," he said. "Trust yourself and trust your wings. You're ready for this." The dragon girl took a deep breath, wings sparking faintly with energy. She had trained, learned, and mastered abilities the Emperor had never predicted. The power that had been hidden inside her all her life now flowed freely, guided by instinct, skill, and determination. As the Emperor's fleet drew closer, his golden eyes glowed with fury and disbelief. He had anticipated fear, hesitation, and failure. Instead, reports from the battlefronts had shown controlled, precise strikes from the dragon girl, disabling his ships without unnecessary destruction, outmaneuvering his tactics, and growing stronger with every engagement. "This cannot be," he roared, his voice shaking the pillars of his palace. "How can a single dragon, guided by a human, defy my empire? This was supposed to be a joke, a humiliation for her, a spectacle for me, and now it is my nightmare." He called his high command, issuing desperate orders. "Concentrate fire, strike with everything, destroy her before she grows stronger. I will not be mocked by my own actions." But the Emperor's fury could not erase what had already begun. The dragon girl had learned, adapted, and mastered powers beyond his understanding. She was no longer fragile. She was unstoppable. And Kale, beside her, was clever, strategic, and ready to act. Together, they were not just surviving, they were thriving, proving the Emperor wrong at every turn. The first ships of the Emperor's fleet entered range, their weapons blazing. The dragon girl's wings flared with energy, and she surged forward, her movements precise and powerful. She disabled the lead ships with calculated strikes, sending them spinning harmlessly into the void. Kale guided the starship through evasive maneuvers, but it was her energy, her instincts, and her strength that made the difference. Each engagement was a lesson, each victory a proof that she had surpassed every expectation. The Emperor watched in horror as reports streamed in, ships defeated, strategies outmaneuvered. His power challenged by a dragon he had dismissed as weak and a human he had deemed insignificant. For the first time in his long reign, the Emperor felt regret. Not the fleeting annoyance of a missed amusement, but a deep, gnawing, bitter regret. He had underestimated them both. He had assumed cruelty and mockery would control the outcome, that weakness could never become strength. And now, he faced consequences he had never imagined. The dragon girl hovered above the battlefield, wings glowing, energy thrumming through her body. She had learned to anticipate attacks, to control her power, to act with precision and mercy. And in that moment, she realized something profound. She was no longer a victim of the Emperor's cruelty. She was a force to be reckoned with, a creature who had grown beyond the mockery and fear that had defined her life. Kale looked at her, eyes shining with pride and awe. "You've done it," he said softly. "You've turned what was meant as a joke into something far greater. You're unstoppable now." She nodded, wings sparking, energy humming through her claws. "And he will know it," she said. "He will regret every cruel word, every mocking laugh, every moment he underestimated me. The joke is over. And now, the Empire will learn what it means to face a dragon who was never meant to be weak." Across the galaxy, the Emperor's fury boiled, his golden eyes blazing with desperation. He realized, too late, that the dragon he had mocked and given to a human mechanic had grown beyond his control. The joke, the cruel amusement he had enjoyed, had turned into a nightmare of power, skill, and defiance. The galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath, watching the shift in balance. A fragile, mock dragon had risen. A human mechanic had guided her. And together, they had become a force the Emperor could no longer ignore, a force he would never forget. The dragon girl flexed her wings, feeling the energy pulse within her, the thrill of victory, and the quiet promise of future challenges. The Emperor had played a cruel joke, but the joke had turned. And now he would live with the bitter regret of underestimating a dragon who refused to remain weak, a human who believed in her, and a power that could not be contained. The stars outside shimmered endlessly, but inside the hearts of the dragon girl and Kale, a fire burned brighter than ever. They had faced cruelty, mockery, and impossible odds, and emerged stronger, wiser, and unstoppable. And somewhere, across the void, the Emperor's golden eyes glowed with a bitterness he could not erase. He had laughed once, and now he would regret it forever.